The chair recognizes the honourable member for Fox Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I want to start off by saying that I support all the pieces of legislation, and I certainly join with the comments of my colleagues earlier in supporting the work of the Financial Services Minister and his team and those from the Attorney General's office. I think it goes without saying that a lot of hard work has been done to try and beat the bushes in order to improve the prospects for our second industry in the country, the financial services sector. I was a bit amused by the member for Montague's admonitions to us, because the day I won't forget is being in the Senate. I guess it must have been in 2000 or so, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3:30 or so in the afternoon. And we were debating, we were asked to rush through these bills to change the financial services laws, because we were told that if we didn't do it, the Bahamas is going to be blacklisted and blah, 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 so on and so forth. Anyway, the bills come before the Senate, and there's some difficulties with the language. I gather our masters overseas didn't like how certain things were worded, so we were instructed that they had to be changed. And so we were, the Senate was suspended indefinitely. And we were told, don't leave the precincts, because indefinite might mean half an hour, it might mean 2 hours, it might mean 3 hours, but just don't leave, because you're going to be called back at some point to go and pass these bills. So story goes that Senate suspended. We all sit around cooling our heels while calls are going between the Cabinet Office and the Attorney General's office, and this thing has changed, that thing has changed. And then I guess we came back maybe 2 or so hours later and said, okay, we're ready to go. And amendments were put, and we had to vote on them, and we had to talk on them. So that's the way things were done. So, yeah, it's just a bit of a, I just tell you that story. It's just quite amusing. The fact is, the way these things go, you just got to be ready when the time comes. And it would be nice to know whether the member for Montague actually supports the bills, or supports the financial services sector, or I don't know, something that says, well, certainly, yeah. I mean, I see, his managing partner was sitting there a couple minutes ago, so I guess it must be important to them. So it would have been nice for him to say, look, I think this is a good idea. And so hopefully the members from his side will say something in support of it. The reason I've got up to stand, Mr. Speaker, is because the two responsibilities I have in immigration have to do with the laws on nationality, the Bahamas Nationality Act and the Immigration Act. And both of these acts support the work of the financial services sector. So very often you will hear the minister get up and the sector will get up and talk about these financial services products which they offer to people overseas. And one of them is that living in the Bahamas is a premium to people who live in other places. And, I think for those of us who've been students in the UK, you just have to spend a day there and you'll figure out why the heck anybody wants to stay over there, when it's so dark and dreary in the night and in the day, and you never see the sun for 6 weeks. And when I went there and had that experience, I realized why everybody, when they come here, they want to stay here, because you get to see the sun all the time. And you don't have to worry about the weather. Not to add the fact that this country is not a bureaucratic nightmare when it comes to taxation. Simple thing. You cross the border, the tax is paid at the border, and now we're going to add VAT, which is just a simple thing. You go to the counter and you pay 7.5%. None of this filling out all these forms and, driving you crazy with the bureaucracy and all the rest of it, intruding into your privacy. So Bahamas sells the idea of living in the Bahamas, a great place to stay, but also an absence of over-regulation, the freedom to move your capital around and to protect your privacy. That's what we're selling. And to some extent, that's been chipped away by the international standards, but we believe you have to do what is necessary for the sector to survive, and that's what we do. The Financial Services Ministry is responsible for doing the R&D to make sure that that all stays on track. So a couple of products which are offered. One is permanent residence. You can get it with the right to work, or you can get it without the right to work. And so-called economic permanent residence has to do with those who invest $500,000 or $1.5 million, and depending on both, there's a turnaround time that's supposed to be 3 weeks in the latter case, and then there's a more normal processing time for those who invest the $500,000. And that's to get high net worth individuals to come to the Bahamas, invest their money. We offer the privacy. We say that the sector is regulated, so there's no crookedness going on here, and that means the Bahamas has a good reputation. The sector has said that, well, at least they told me this last year, that 40% of the business coming into the Bahamas, financial services sector, was coming out of Brazil. So Brazil is obviously a big market. This is an emerging country, a rich country, a powerful country. They have set up an embassy here in the Bahamas, one of the few resident embassies that we have. And we've sent a couple of missions down there to Brazil to actually discuss their tax laws, to discuss whether or not we ourselves should put a mission in Brazil, whether a consulate in Sao Paulo, which is their financial center, or whether in Brasilia, their capital. But the idea is for the Bahamas, in its foreign affairs and its immigration laws, to support what financial services are doing. The one issue I think that most people have with immigration and the nationality laws is that everything takes too long to get done. I mean, we promise a turnaround time in a specific time, but it's more often observed in the breach. And so what happens is that very often, given the resources we have, very often somebody will say, pull this out of the pile because this high net worth individual has to come here and wants to come here, and this will send out an appropriate signal. So we need to have the sector actually, the immigration and nationality sections, properly resourced to be able to deal with the volume of applications which come through in a timely and reasonable fashion. And that doesn't only support the financial services sector, it also supports the whole immigration infrastructure, whether entry at the airport, where people complain about long lines, and we've just done some changes there. We have now put in a call-up system, which we think is going to improve the movement through the immigration arrivals hall by 30%. We're looking at e-gates to facilitate the use of electronic passports to enter the country, to try and cut down the lines, to make that process more quickly, or applying for work permits, permanent residence, and the like, so that there isn't this constant complaint from the public that things just don't get done quickly enough going through those systems. And we've been working with the financial services sector and committed ourselves. I think that the sector itself has said, if necessary, they would provide monies to try and provide equipment for the government. I think there's been resistance to some extent on our part, because really the government should carry its own expenses. But it's not acceptable for you to have a situation today where a decision, and I was just looking at the last immigration board meeting that I held on work permits. I think most applications now we're dealing with are in July. So that's cut down considerably from where it was. Before, when I first came, it was like 6 months or so. So it's now July. But even that, in my view, is too long a gap. This is something that should really go much more quickly than this. And I think that what people are facing is, after the decision is made, there's a 4-week gap between the time the decision is made to grant a work permit and the time you actually get the work permit. And that also has to do with equipment and manpower. So Bahamas has a lot of work to do in terms of buttressing all of the things, all of our systems and all of our internal infrastructure to make things move along more quickly. Now, that's one side of the equation. That's the high net worth individuals. And they're important to the country. And So the immigration officer has the job of being, if I can say it colloquially, a sort of Mr. Nice Guy to the high net worth individuals. At the same time, he's called upon to be an enforcement officer against those who break the laws. Now, occasionally, there is a clash between the two roles, because last week, for example, I announced in here that, and this happens every day, but this was a particular exercise which took place out in western New Providence, and we interdicted 90 people on that day. And there's a procedure which is followed if you don't have your documents on you, which means that you get to go visit the detention center and your employer has to come and produce the so on and so forth. Now, occasionally, and I think a couple of, this may have been last year, right? There was this big explosion in the press where, you know, this person shouldn't have been treated this way because, you know, maybe he looked different from the rest of the people and so on and so forth. But the question is whether the procedures of immigration can be so stylized or accommodated that it would be able to deal with both sides of the equation in a reasonable and civil manner. I think it largely happens now, but every once in a while there's a problem. I just want the public to know that the Immigration Department is sensitive to this. The director says, for example, is having a meeting this morning, or had a meeting this morning, to try and deal with the enforcement unit on how to accommodate both these roles. But I've said before that immigration is a blunt instrument. You know, these are not ballet dancers that you're hiring. You know, these are people who have a tough job, and they are not often spoken to in a very kind fashion. So you have to be able to be tough. At the same time, you have to be civil, and that's the training which they get. And I say again that in no agency of the government is abuse condoned or supported. People are told that they have to accommodate these both roles of being civil as well as being tough in enforcing the law. I want to say, to repeat, before moving from that point once more, this whole question of trying to move these processes along so that the financial services sector, when it goes out, if it says you apply for something in the Bahamas and it'll get turned around in 3 weeks, that we can do it in 3 weeks. For example, one of the challenges is security checks. That takes a long time. So we need to work on that as an issue if we're selling the whole product. The situation changes with regard to this every year and every month, and the responsibility is the financial services sector, the financial services minister, to be able to keep up with the developments. We ourselves in Foreign Affairs have been trying to work with the financial services sector to go far afield to support the work that they do. I mentioned that there's some thought of a mission in Brazil. We've looked at, in the last year, we've looked at Dubai, the possibility of a consulate in Dubai, a mission in Qatar, a consulate in Istanbul, and perhaps in Kingston, Jamaica. But all of these things take money. They also take the support of the Bahamian public. And every time it is convenient for opposition figures to seek to attack this effort on the grounds that somehow we're on this individual frolic going all around the world, beating up our bodies at 36,000 feet just for the fun of it. But the fact is, there is an attempt to make sure that the Bahamas is known far and wide. The mission of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for this country is that Bahamians should have a seamless experience around the world, whether for travel or for business. When they cross the borders and they show that Bahamian passport, people have to know where the Bahamas is and know what it stands for. And the leading edge of that is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And you can't do it by sitting home in Nassau twiddling your thumbs. You got to go out and you've got to beat the bushes. And there are many young people who, despite the salary, the low salary salaries which they're paid, and allowances, some of them having to go into their own pockets to support themselves overseas. But there are many young Bahamians who want to do that job for the Bahamas. And I think I've said to the Prime Minister that this got to be an enterprise for the under 35s, to go out there and start up for the Bahamas, get to know these places, and start beating the bushes for people to come and invest in our country. It supports the maritime sector, where people are interested in putting ships on our registry. But sometimes they say we can't get an apostille in a timely basis. We can't get authentication of documents, talked about in corporations. So we're saying if the Bahamas puts consulates in these areas, this may be someplace to support. And the countries that we're going to are willing to support what we do, because they want us to come there, because it's good for their citizens, and it also supports their foreign policy. So it works hand in hand. And we think that this will be a good thing. Yes. Yeah. That was an interesting time. And the Prime Minister said I was forgiven. But I just also want to say that I'm advised by the officials that over the weekend in Ragged Island, there were 105 persons believed to be Haitian nationals interdicted at Ragged Island, which makes for the month, for the last 4 weeks, or the sum of 409 people who've been interdicted. 186 at Bell Island, 122 in Ragged Island, and now 105 over the weekend. I'm also advised that 3 Cubans were interdicted at Wood Key, which I believe is near Mangrove Key, Andros, and they are also being brought in. The Cubans are being taken to Inagua. I think they're waiting on the weather to break because the detention center is unable to hold anymore. It's actually bursting at the seams. But we expect that a repatriation flight will take place tomorrow, which will remove half of those individuals back to Port-au-Prince. I want to once again commend the officers of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force and the Immigration Department for the work they do on a daily basis in seeking to stop people from breaching our borders. I had a very interesting comment made to me. Amongst the people who came in, there were 8 children. 8 children, I think, in one group. And it turns out that those 8 children had been repatriated from this country about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So what you have is a revolving door going on here. We believe that there are Bahamians who are driving this smuggling effort which is coming in here. We are sitting with the intelligence chiefs to try and figure out how these things can be interrupted. Within a couple of days, I'm hoping, with the leave of the Cabinet, to announce some new initiatives with regard to documentation to try and stop new people from making applications in this country after just jumping off the boat, and also to tighten up the rules with regard to the use of nationals and their passports and the requirement for people to have residency permits here, notwithstanding that they may have a contingent right to citizenship of this country at the age of 18. But all of these rules have to be tightened up to stop this demand here or this inflow of people who are coming here unlawfully. And it is a very important thing. It is to the point where in some communities people are on a knife's edge about this, and it may be that some drastic measures will have to be taken, unlike we've seen in recent years, to try and bring this matter under control. What I do ask for is the support of the Bahamian people for the work of the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, the Royal Bahamas Police Force, and the Department of Immigration in trying to bring this matter under control. we have to know who is in our country. Everybody admits that there are some categories that require work permits to be issued. The whole point is to not have undocumented people in the country. And it is clear that undocumented people in this country could not remain here unless they had the support and comfort of Bahamians who keep them here. And so I'm saying it's your patriotic duty to stop that and to support the officials in their every effort to eliminate this illegal immigration problem. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your indulgence. I say once again that this is a great effort by the Minister for Financial Services, and I support the work that he's doing and commend the bills to the House. Thank you.